Welcome back, everyone. We're here at the New School Sensei. I'm your host, Lance Douglas. We have Ken Douglas as well, and we also have John Will. So if you don't know who John Will is, you're probably not from Australia. He pretty much is one of the fathers of Australian Jiu-Jitsu, part of the Dirty Dozen. So one of the first dozen Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. That's pretty special, and you have a wealth of knowledge. And today we wanted to bring you in because you had a really cool Facebook post about finances. In particularly, you seeing a lot of your mates. They might be 40, 50, 60 years old, great at martial arts, but unfortunately going broke. So we want to get you in. Ken, I'll let you just start it off because you've got a really big passion about personal finance and also helping people, building their wealth as well.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so essentially, we usually talk about coaching. Yeah, we usually stick to what we're good at, teaching kids, karate, jiu-jitsu, all that sort of stuff. But there was a really good post that you did, John. I had a look at it again. It was July 26th. It had 250 likes, 50 comments, and quite a few shares. So it blew up.
Well, yeah,
Um,
I
and
pay
it,
more attention to that stuff. It's on
yeah,
the
so
news.
essentially, as Lance was saying, it was talking about how you sort of uh, found yourself, like most of your friends, like if they've been in the martial arts, they're poor, they're struggling. And then that sort of is led them to make some risky moves, especially as they move into their 60s and 70s. So we thought we'd bring you in so we can sort of learn a bit more, especially someone with your experience. So if you want to start us off, John, if you want to talk about what spurred you to do that post in the first place.
I can't remember that post. But probably almost certainly it would have been an interaction that I've had with a couple of people who, for some reason or another, they've indicated that they're struggling. And I hate that. I mean, especially when you see someone, and there's so many of them, I can't remember the particular person because it's right across the board, and not only it might not have even been in Australia. Could well have been in England or something like that. I teach a lot of seminars. I used to teach 120, 30, 130 seminars a year for 20 years. But now I've just backed that right off. But I still probably teach 20 or 30 to friends and stuff like that. So it was probably on one of my European, if it was in July, it could very well have been my trip to the UK and speaking to one of my friends there. And it's I don't mind so much if crappy martial artists are struggling. That is not my landscape. But if really solid, good martial artists, people that are, I think the world is better off for having those people in it. If that cadre of people are struggling, that's upsetting to me. And it doesn't need to be that way. And I think martial arts people, this may not come across well, but I think a lot of the time they are really the bottom of the barrel in terms of, like, I think what happens with a lot of people opening up martial arts schools is that they wake up one day, realize they've got nothing to offer. They've got no real skills to sell to the world to make an income. So they end up coming up with a bright idea. I'll monetize my hobby. And that can work, but I think 99 times out of 100, it doesn't work. And unfortunately, I think that's how a lot of martial arts schools are born. And it's just sad that they're struggling, because I don't like to see good quality people struggle. There's a lot of non-quality people in the martial arts landscape, but I don't care about them.
Yeah, we got you, John. Yeah, so firstly, we probably should have started with, none of the stuff we're going to talk about is financial advice. So if you're taking advice from a podcast with just three blokes having a chat, you probably have a long look at yourself. So definitely don't go and action any of the stuff that we're going to talk about. It's going to be very generic because obviously we're just having a chat. We don't know people's exact backgrounds and situations and all that. So please don't take it as financial advice. see, you're better off chatting to your financial planner, your accountant, your mortgage broker, all that stuff instead of us. But obviously, we're definitely happy to have a chat. So, if we're moving on, um, me and Lance were having a chat about this topic, like why are martial artists, a lot of martial artists are so poor with their money. So, something that we were talking about was that as a business owner, we don't actually have to pay ourselves super. So that's why you see a lot of martial arts business owners, they're getting to 60, 65. They don't actually have that much in super. Like when we talk to our friends who are running clubs, we ask them about their super. Like no one really cares about it, especially at our age, because we're 36, but yeah, so we believe that if you're working a normal job, you're pretty much forced into saving that 10, 11, 12% of super every single year. And then by the time you get to 60, you've got a pretty good nest egg there. Whereas for us, if you're not doing that, you're going to end up broke. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that, John.
Yeah, well, I probably started my super at about your age, about 36. Okay, yeah, so a while ago, that many decades ago. um, and it was one of the best. There's always 4 or 5 inflection points, or a number of inflection points in people's lives where you look back and you go, wow, that was a really good decision. Then you make a whole lot of bad ones, but then you get one really good one, outstrips the consequences of all those little bad ones. I've made plenty of bad decisions, like hundreds of them. And by some miracle, I'm still alive. But the 4 or 5 really good decisions I've made have well outstripped the consequences of the bad ones. And one of them was making my own, getting my super sorted. Yeah. And I didn't care about that stuff. I never cared about money. I still really don't. But I apply 1% of my brain to doing that because you need it. And so I have to apply 1% of my intellect to that topic. And it doesn't take much more than that, I would imagine, for most people, right, to do pretty well. And what spurred me on to do that 1% is the fact that I married my wife, Melissa, and suddenly she didn't even need that as either or want that. She wasn't focused on money, but I suddenly felt very compelled to provide her with what I would consider to be a good life with lots of options, and not just following my footsteps, which was homeless in Asia, living in a water pipe, and stuff like that. Fun, happy, but, no assets or anything like that. No future planning, but once I got married, I went, no, I need to sort this shit out. So, and I ended up creating, I just asked I had some super, some tiny little bit, not much. And then my wife had some little bits of super because she was a gym instructor, swimming instructor, a martial arts coach. She cleaned toilets. She did babysitting. I think she had 7 jobs when I met her. So she had savings. She's a wallet. So she got cash saving. Yep. And we decided, I just asked a question of my financial advisor at the time. I was at AMP, which is a large Australian organization that does super and other investment products. And I said, how much am I paying in fees per year? And they didn't want to answer me. I remember it being quite awkward. It took me 6 or 7 phone calls to finally get them to tell me the fees I'm actually paying for them to give me my 1 or 2% earnings per year, which AMP was doing back then. And it was $6,000 a year.
Wow.
In other words, they were taking all the profits pretty much. So then my next question was, I went to an accountant here in Geelong where I live, and I said, how much does it cost to set up your own super fund? Because I heard you can do that. And she said, $2,500. I went, I can do that level of math. I'd be better off doing that. Now, it's a bit more complicated than just the difference between 2.5 and 6, but because you have to know what you want to invest in and how you do it. If you're an idiot, you shouldn't do it. And I said, am I an idiot, to my accountant? Because she said, if you're an idiot, you shouldn't do it. And she said, do you own your own house? And I said, well, I don't own it, but I've got one. She goes, you're not an idiot. So you can do it. And I did it. And that's what got me into creating my own self-managed super funds. For those who don't know, that just means you're in charge, or you set up a little company and you name it. That's your X family superannuation fund, and you can put money into there every week. You can also roll over any money from your own super. And with me and Melissa, we put it together, and you can roll it over as a couple. Now you've got a big nest egg in there or something worthwhile, and then you can see it growing. Then we get into compounding effects, and which also happen on the mat and happen in training environments, compounding effects. So there's a lot of crossover. Um, and then it just went really well, because once you double your money, you started with 300 grand, you get 4 doublings, you're up to $3-4 million. It's not much effort. The rule of 72 and all of that. If you're earning 10%, if you're getting 10% return on your money, I think the rule of 72 is, if I'm earning 10% of my money, divide 72 by 10, 7.2 years, and that's how many years it takes to double that. So if you've got 3 or 4 of them in you, you don't have to start out with that much to become a multimillionaire. But if you've waited to 70, good luck with that.
You're pretty stuck. So it sounds like, John, you didn't start as early as what I thought. Like, I thought that you would have started straight off the bat at 20, but you actually started like at a pretty decent age in your mid 30s, but you
Correct.
obviously did a lot of work to actually think about, because having your own super fund, it is a lot of because like you probably heard of, there was people during COVID were taking money out of their super, which I think was, it's definitely proved to be not a good choice. And running your own SMSF, it's not for the lighthearted. I know me and Lance, we've been talking about it, but we probably won't. We're happy with our fund as it is, just like a regular fund. And we put it all in growth and all that sort of stuff. But I thought what would be cool if, Lance, if you can talk about our super journey and what sort of helped us sort of succeed, so that John can sort of hear about the background from us. And we have a bit of a secret weapon in our family.
Yeah, essentially. So we started coaching full time, would have been what, like 10 to 12 years ago. And so I initially started the karate school because another coach, he got eye gouged. So he literally couldn't run the school. So he ran around to all different coaches in our affiliation. They all said no. Eventually got to me, and I was stupid enough to say yes. So from then we kind of built up the school, and essentially my mum, she's an accountant. So she was running the business, the numbers, and guess how much she was paying me and Ken for 10 years, John?
I don't know. I can't guess.
Pretty much minimum wage. We were like 30, 40K, like pretty much nothing.
That much.
No, it wasn't that low. That's not minimum. But it was
It was pretty
low.
low.
No, it wasn't that low.
But essentially, yeah, so what she forced us, she essentially took all the profits and just smashed it into our super during that time. Obviously, at the time, like when I found out, because me and Ken were oblivious to finances. So after, 5, 10 years, you're seeing all our mates driving fast cars, going through a couple of wives, whatever. We've got nothing to show for it, but thanks to our mum, because yeah, she's Asian and very frugal.
You got to
And
know. If you did do it, I'd question what the hell's going on with it.
but because of it, we have a huge super balance.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of our story with it. So that kind of delayed gratification, we didn't want it, but it was kind of forced upon us by our parents. So we're pretty lucky with that when we can.
Yeah. She's our secret weapon, yeah, Lance.
Yeah.
We call her the stingiest accountant in the western suburbs.
Awesome.
So she goes through every single line of that company card, every expense gets questioned. But it's been amazing, because something that I've actually been thinking about is what's like the one thing that makes it really hard to actually save enough money to actually invest. It's actually ourselves. Like, when there's money in our bank account, usually most people, the money comes in and they spend it all. So what our mum did, she actually didn't pay us that much, and she actually was the one saving the money. And she chucked in huge amounts, like the max amount, into our super. We ended up saving a big war chest of money, and that sort of helped us to buy a bunch of like investment properties. That sort of spurred us on our investing journey. But yeah, I think that saving element is very tricky. So John, if you want to talk about that and your experience of just saving money.
Um, You got a super smart mum, and you're lucky. Like, that's really cool, because I think a lot of the problem with many martial arts is perhaps they haven't got that person, in their life, not even in their peer group or their friends. And that's always been a bit of a taboo to talk about money, and that's a problem, right? Because then you are left to your own devices. My parents never taught me about money or anything like that, so I had to figure it out myself just through my natural curiosity. Start asking questions. What's going on here? What's that mean? And then digging into it, digging deep. And I think that I read The Richest Man in Babylon. For those who haven't read that book, save 10% of everything you earn, buy some goats and chickens. They build more goats and chickens, and then do that and reinvest the profits, and you're a zillionaire, and that's it. So you don't have to read the book. You just got to do save. But I would up the 10% to more, right? So save 10 as a bare minimum, but it should be 20, 30, 40, 50. And as you get more money, in my view, you don't up your lifestyle to be commensurate with the money. Forget it. If you were living on, noodles and farm produce that you bought at the market for $25, keep doing that for 20, 30 years, and all that extra money, like it seems like you've done it, just bash it into the savings. And it's hard to get people to look into the future. It's difficult. Most people struggle to look past Friday, let alone the end of the year, let alone 10 years, let alone 40 years down the track. But it'll turn up. All being well, that time will turn up. So what do you want to do? You should be thinking about your future self a little bit more than your current self. And your future self will thank you for what you did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I'm fortunate enough now that I'm retired now, so I'm financially retired. So I've clicked on my super. I still do everything that I want to do. I'll go to class tonight and get on the mat and do all that, but I just do it for free. I don't get a wage or anything, because my super pays me a couple of $100,000 a year, whether I want to do something or not do something. So I'm doing something for the right reasons. So it's even better for my students, because the only reason I'm there is because I want to be there, which should be, that's the perfect reason, right? I also don't have to accept idiots into my school, which I would have had to do at some point to pay the rent. Now I don't. I vet them. Are they a good fit for my culture? So all my students benefit because of my limited financial literacy. That everyone benefits. And then I got off track with that. So your question was saving. So saving is, I tell you, I remember the first time with My Richest Man in Babylon, save the 10% of everything you earn, right? So I was teaching 20 to 25 private lessons a week, charging, I don't know what I was charging, say $60, $6 goes to the saving, no matter what. At some point, we're probably in a period of bills and early mortgage and things like that. So it was always stressful to pay the bills. That was my wife's stress, not me. I was oblivious. But it was I'm going to say it was hard to save 10%. But I remember when I reframed it. Instead of saving 10% of everything I earn, I reframed it. I'm going to learn to live on 90% of everything I earn. I know it's the same math, but that resonated with me. Oh, I can do that. I can learn to live on 90%. That was easier than saving 10% in some weird way. And that helped me a lot. Then it was like, you know what? I think I can live on 80%. You know what? I think I can live on 70%. And then as my money increased through doing more seminars and work for the government, the military and police and other organizations and different things, I got more income streams. I can learn to live on 10%. I can learn to live on 5% of what I'm making. So now you're saving 9%. So I think that was a really good framing for me. Rather than sticking with the saving 10%, then as my income went up, I probably just would have kept saving 10%. So I changed it around. Can I live on 90%? And then 80, and then 70, and then so forth. And that worked for me.
I love that, John. That's so awesome. Now, so if we move on to the nuts and bolts of how we can actually help some people out, I thought a really cool way that we could stage this was that if we talked about different periods of people's lives. So we got when people are starting off. So if they're a 25-year-old martial arts coach, And then the middle would be if they're 40, they run their own club, all that sort of stuff. And sort of towards the latter end, when they're 55 to 60, they might have multiple clubs. They've been on the mats for a long time, well established. So maybe if we start off with some experiences or things to think about. Obviously, this isn't advice, guys. We're just having a chat. Yeah, it's just things we want you guys to have a think about, things to look out for as well. For those guys that are 25 years old ish, yeah, that's just starting off. They're a coach. Like they might run their own club. They might be an assistant instructor, all that sort of stuff. From your experience, John, is there anything that you would like these guys to have a think about, to look into more, and then even things to avoid?
Certainly we can't advise because everyone's situation is so unique. That's the problem. It's like saying, help fix my health. What? What do you mean? So because they can be, maybe they're buying a house, maybe they're not buying a house. Are they married? Are they not married? Is there potential for growth? Do they have 3 jobs or just the one? Have they got, are they motivated? Are they not? Like there's too many ways to slice it to ever offer advice. But I'll talk about myself, right? So again, when I was 25, I had nothing. So no savings of any kind. So there was that. So if I started that at mid-30s, but I guess if I could go back in a time machine, talk to my 25-year-old self, knowing what I know now, how would I advise myself? Because I can do that. I would definitely advise myself I'll give myself that advice I just talked about. Learn to live on, pick a number, 80% of everything that you earn. If you do a lesson and you earn $100 for a private lesson, you're only allowed to spend 80. And then invest the other 20. And if you don't know what to invest, it can be in your super that's got tax advantages and stuff. But even if it's not, there's things you can do. I mean, the best thing about super for me was I pay no tax because that's the law with super. I retired before they changed the rules, which I'm sure they will, but I retired because of that. I don't want them to change the rules. So I lock it in there and I'm done now. I don't pay tax. Even on Bitcoin, that's in there. Pretty cool. I'm not paying tax.
Cool.
And investment properties and shares and shit. So I would say that learn to live on 80%. Like start that as a habit. Make that a habit. We already do it, right? Like we learn to get everything done in 16 hours of our day, or 12 hours, or 10 hours, or whatever you want to allocate to work. We can do these things. So just learn to live on 80% of whatever it is. And you can. I think it's pretty easy, even if you're just being paid, McDonald's wage, the bare minimum wage. You can find a way to do it. You might not like it, but you can find a way. When I bought my first home, it was 47 grand, way back then. But I couldn't afford it. I was actually unemployed at the time. I was unemployed. I realized that I was reading Lord of the Rings on my front veranda, and there was a house for sale next door, and the estate agent pulled up and they were showing through, and it kind of distracted me. And I went, "Hey, how you doing? What's going on here? I'm selling a house. How much is it? I'm curious." I wasn't even looking for a house. I didn't have a job. And he said, 47 grand. I went, "Oh, interesting." And then I got back to my book and my brain started working in the back of my head going, how much rent am I paying here? How much can that be a year if you pay back a loan? Next thing, I'm down the bank that same afternoon. I went, if I borrow like $45,000, what's the interest payment? And it wasn't much more than my rent. And within a week, I bought that house. I had to get a friend to write a fake letter that I was working for him and take that to the bank. You didn't need a tax return back in those days. It's like a letter. I'm employed. And they went, sure. And they gave me the money. I bought the home. But I couldn't pay for it. I was unemployed and didn't have a job. But there was 3 rooms. I just rented all the rooms out to 3 university students, and I slept in the laundry on a mattress for 2 years.
Wow, that's sacrifice.
But that was my point. Thank you. My point is you can get it done. You might not like sleeping in the laundry, but you can find a way. You can live in a caravan in the backyard. You can find a way, and that's all just going to be temporary. And it was for me. That house doubled in value. No, nearly tripled in value in 3 years. Nearly. It was. I just asked it. I sold it for 120,000 2.5 years later.
Wow.
And I moved out of the laundry and bought a house, So, but anyway, that aside, the main point of that was these decisions about living on 80% of what we earn could be like, oh, you mean I can't go out for dinner? That's right, you can't, and do you mean I have to go and buy bulk groceries at the market on Sunday? Yeah, you do. And you have to have a sack of rice instead of the prime cuts of meat. Yeah, you can do it. You might not like it, but you can do it. Don't tell me you can't do it. So that's kind of my thinking on getting into a savings thing that I would do at 25. And then the other thing I would do is tell my 25-year-old self that there's going to come a time where you are not going to have the energy, puts hand up, to do 3 jobs, 4 jobs, 5 jobs, whatever it is. There's a time where you can, you can man up and you can do whatever, you can do, and when you are younger like that, don't stop your day job to teach martial arts. Do your day job and teach martial arts as a hobby and extra income, and then get another job on Saturday and Sunday. Do that for 5 or 10 years and you're going to be golden. But people tend to not do that. It's just kind of weird.
It's a hard sell, isn't it?
It is. It's not. I'm not saying any of this is easy. People just want the easy thing. So, and also the last thing I would say is, what to invest in. Knowing what I know now, you got a small amount of money and you can't see anything happening for a while. I've seen friends of mine and talk myself into it, get some Bitcoin if you believe in it. But when I say that, I don't say that lightly. I did 200 hours work before I made that decision.
Mm-hmm.
Learning. So I think before you make any investment decision, where am I storing this value that I've earned? Where am I storing? Got to store it somewhere. You can put it under your bed and it's losing value every year because it's not even keeping a pace with inflation. You can put it into some kind of an ETF that will maybe give you 8 or 9%. Okay. Now at least you're not drowning. You're keeping abreast of inflation. Or you can put it in something that's compounding at 50% year over year that comes with high volatility. I don't give a shit about volatility. That's a fucking feature. Otherwise it wouldn't have upward momentum, right? So the no volatility, flat ocean means you can't go surfing. So I would say that. But before you invest in anything, have a thesis.
Of
Like
course.
you would want to be able to convince me why that property is good, or why those shares have got potential, or why Bitcoin. If you need to be able to convince someone else, and yourself and someone else. And if you can do that, maybe you should go for it. But a lot of people invest with no thesis. I've got these stocks. What are they? I don't know. What? That's kind of mental. Or I bought crypto. What? Tell me about it. And they don't even know. It's kind of crazy. So I did 200 hours. My standard thing is 1 to 200 hours work to build a thesis before I've got an opinion on any topic.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's work, but I got time, so I can do the work. And I like learning, so it's not torture for me. It's fun, right? But you got to look at both sides. You got to look at the positives and the negatives, not just be captured by the algorithm, and then all you see is Trump's good, or all you see is Trump's bad, or whatever it is, right? The algorithm will get you. You got to actively try to find out what's the downside, actively try to what's the upside, pros and cons, and then you make probably a centrist kind of call, right, on everything. That's not easy to do. Again,
Yeah,
want outsized returns and outsized outcomes, you need to do outsized actions.
100%. Maybe if I get Lance to chime in, if
John,
is there anything that you'd like to add about this age group, Lance? If we're trying to help out, the guys that are just starting out, the 25-ish.
Yeah, I guess it is tricky because in today's society, we're very materialistic, and we love to consume things. So to tell a 25-year-old, you need to sacrifice, you need to save, live by your means, maybe forego certain privileges, watch your mates, drive fancy cars, whatever, go for brekkie. It's a tough sell. So yeah, maybe like say John, say if I had a gun to your head, you got to convince this 25-year-old. You need to like get on board with delayed gratification. Like how do you do it?
I give him a copy of the Stanford marshmallow experiment.
Yep. Can you tell our listeners a bit more about that?
I haven't got the numbers in my head right now, but the rough gist, pardon me if I'm way off with the numbers, I'm going to make them up. But they did an experiment. Again, I forget the year, maybe early 90s. You could probably Google that. In Stanford University of America. It's called the famous marshmallow experiment. They got a bunch of kids, might be 400 or 600, quite a sample. And they said they put a marshmallow in front of them and two marshmallows. And they said, if you want to, you can eat a marshmallow right now. But if you wait 10 minutes, you'll get two of them. And I think it's roughly like this. 80% of the kids went straight away, like, I'm not waiting 10 minutes. I'm just going to eat that marshmallow, bird in the hand, right? And then 20% of them waited the 10 minutes and smashed themselves in the face and got up and walked in circles and did all this. And then they got double, right? That wasn't the experiment. The experiment is kind of weird. They stalked these kids for 20 years and they see how did they turn out in life? Like, did that ability to say no to that instant gratification and delay it, did that ability actually translate into better outcomes in life? And I think it's roughly like this. Almost 100% of the kids who had the ability to say no and wait 10 minutes had better lives on every metric. Wealthier, happier, fitter, not just their finances, in everything. So there's obviously something about, like planning or looking into the future and being able to imagine how better it will be if I get fitter, if I, feel whatever you want in there, if I want to be richer, if I want to this and that, you know what, that's worth me suffering a bit now. So that's it. I would give him that kind of story. And, cause I remember that got me, I went, oh shite, wow. And it's data, actual data. And I think they replicated it later on with a larger sample and nothing changed. So there's something about saying no to something right now and just waiting a little bit for a way better outcome that just gives us better outcomes in life.
Yep. No, definitely. I guess it's hard to argue with that empirical data. Like, it's kind of that's just what happens. Let's move back to the post. Even though you don't really remember it, I wrote a couple of notes about it. So the two main things you talked about, part of your thesis. So number one, be excellent, which that's kind of I always assume that was a given, but I guess for some people they kind of cruise through their career.
I've got a story. Can I
Go
interrupt?
for it. Yeah, go for it.
You guys almost certainly know who Robert Kiyosaki is.
Yep.
I spent 2 weeks with him once about 35, 40 years ago. This is before he turned into a salesman on YouTube. He was really good. He was a young guy going around. He invented the Velcro wallet in Hawaii, and then he gave talks on happiness and this and that. He came down I was teaching people. I was working an extra little gig to make some extra funds at a health resort for rich people down at the coast. So rich people would come there for a week, pay $5,000 or whatever it was, and I'd take them abseiling and then, make them scared, try to make them cry. It was basically my job, make them cry. Get them up at 4 a.m, take them swimming in the ocean and, realize that there's fears and overcoming fears and blah, 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 blah. I don't agree with this approach now, but at the time that was my job. He was one of the people there, took a liking to my enthusiasm and all of that. And he said, I'm teaching a seminar next weekend in Adelaide. It's called Money and You. Wasn't anything about money. It was about mindset. Do you want to come? Won't cost you anything. I went, nah, not interested. Training, whatever. And he goes, John, normally it costs $2,000. You sure you don't want to come? I said, I'm in. So isn't that funny? The fact that he put a value on it suddenly made me interested. So my very first lesson of Robert Kiyosaki was just that one. When you put a value on something, people are interested. If it's free, they are not interested. So no more free classes, boys. Okay. So I went to that thing and I did the gig, and he said, "Great, come next weekend. I'm doing another one, and I want you to compare how I delivered, how I talk, how I'm communicating with the last one, and start taking notes." I thought, wow, he's being nice. I did that. And it was like line for line, the same thing. He cried at the same word, the same. I mean, it was so scripted. It was bizarre. But I remember thinking, wow, he is really paying fine attention to what music's playing in the background when he's talking about this, what the lighting, like, oh, this was all news to me. Like, what the hell? And I remember thinking, I want to have that level, pay that level of attention to my martial arts coaching, which was radical. And I do. So the way I teach and coach is radically different, most other schools. So, but he was the guy that inspired me to do that. Anyway, that's the background. The story now is he gave me some advices through the week where I was hanging out with him, and I remember them. So that's weird that I can remember quotes. I'm not usually gifted at remembering what people say and all. But one of the first things he said to me was, the biggest thing to hold you back as a young person is the good enough to get by attitude in whatever field you want. If you're on the good enough to get by mode, you'll never be exceptional. So you've got to be absolutely the other way. Pay super attention to detail is the biggest thing that will separate, the biggest distinction between people who are super successful and not is super successful, pay super attention to detail, and the others do not do that. And that was, yeah, that's a truth. And I got it from him.
Yeah, there you go. It kind of, maybe that type of advice would hit home for a lot of, I guess, people listening now. Seems like, particularly in Australia, like in Melbourne, it's kind of that sense of entitlement with a lot of young people. They're kind of entitled to, having, roof over their head, to get, things they want, have arguments go their way. So yeah, I guess in today's day and age, that's good wisdom for them.
And it's easy to do. Like, I found it easy to do because I applied that thinking to the thing I love to do. So so if you're into surfing or growing carrots or building yo-yos, find the thing that you love to do and pay attention to detail in that domain, which shouldn't be hard, right? Because, right, you just get more out of it. You'll love it. But then later on, that will become a habit and it'll bleed out into every other area of your life. And then you'll pay attention to detail about investing, about your houses, about the share portfolio you're getting, about going surfing, how you're going to holiday, how you travel. And you'll look like you're an OCD freak to most people. No, you're not. You're just paying attention to detail at a level that is way higher than normal. Right? Now, I think everyone does it with something. It might be making their coffee. It might be their shoes, some little thing, right? Their car. So we're already doing it. Get better at it and then let it bleed out into other aspects of your life. And every aspect of your life that it bleeds into will improve.
How do you reckon, say if like we have a thought experiment, say you're the new Prime Minister of Australia, how do you instill those values, attention to detail at like a huge like national level? Like you got to do it for all the kids in high school.
My God, that's a
These are hard questions, put you on the pump.
yeah. But I think this is no thought. I might have a better idea later today. But on the spot, I think what I just said, like, don't even start like that. Start with, what is it you like doing? Because a lot of people will have an answer to that question, right? I like eating Frosty Flakes. I like surfing. I like growing tomatoes or martial arts or whatever it is. Most people got something that they like more than other things. Okay, just drill down on that. Get good at that. Like, figure out how you can know more about that or be better at that than 90% of the population. And once you do that, you'll realize that's a skill in itself that you can then focus that on the other areas that you don't like, but you just apply the skill, not the time. I don't like you got, I'm not interested in money and finances. It doesn't interest me in the slightest, but that's a big problem for me, right? Would have been. But can I apply 1% of what I do with coaching, which I do like? And I've got lots to say, books and books in my brain about coaching models at the highest level, like elite operators and stuff and all this kind of how you set things up. I've got lots to say about that because I like doing it, but money I don't like. But okay, can I just apply 1%? Or you might want to say time. Can I do an hour a week? But in that mindset on the thing I hate. Yeah, the answer is yeah. And so do that, and just my 1 hour a week or whatever it is, made a giant difference in my life to be independently wealthy and all of that crap, which I'm not interested in, weirdly. Doesn't
There you
like my
go. That's
and coaching and stuff. So that's how I probably do it. I might have a better answer later, but start where they are, not where you want them to be. Right. Where you want to be, that requires forward thinking. Start where they are. I like surfing. Oh, really? So is there a better wax? What wax you got? Is it the best wax? How do you know it's the best wax? Have you done a study on wax? The blah, blah, blah. Fuck, wax. What are you talking about? No. What about your wetsuit? When do you go? What's high tide, low tide? When's the best thing? And then who are your top 5 surfers? You don't know who they are? Fucking find out who they are. And suddenly, with a tiny little bit of, I don't know anything about surfing. I'm just rambling, but it doesn't take anything to suddenly pay more attention. And then just the act of doing that will show you how to pay more attention, and then point that at other topics you don't care about, but you use less time. Something like that. Make that sound better.
yeah. No, I can definitely resonate with all that. I guess especially today because a lot of youngsters are glued to their technology and they pay a lot of attention to their technology, but are not very attentive to everything else in their surrounding world. So I know with my son, like he's 4, he's not on tech, but he does watch a couple of TV shows. But like we're at the lights, and he asked me, why is their brake light red? And I didn't really know. He's like, how come the blinker light is yellow? Why are their headlights white?
Nice.
So that curiosity, I guess we kind of lose it as we get older. And I'm just worried the next generation, because they're so stuck to the iPads and iPhones, they're just losing that just curiosity for the world.
Maybe. I was always ultra curious. Where is this?
Yeah, look at the books. I'm very impressed with the book collection. Wowee.
These 2 books were written by a guy called Don Drager, Asian Fighting Arts, and weirdly named Weapons and Fighting Arts of the Southeast Asian Archipelago. And Don Drager, back in the 60s, he was a US Marine, and he just traveled all over Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, India, China, Japan, Okinawa, checking out all the different martial arts and writing these books. And when I was a 17, 16-year-old, that made me like intensely curious. I want to do that. What do you want to do when you leave school? That. Don't be insane. Don't do that. But I just followed his footsteps and did a lot of the same routes, a lot of the same training in those places. And that was all driven by curiosity and reading some books, right? Because there was no internet back then. So I think curiosity is probably a huge driver. If you can get someone curious about something, like your boys asking these awesome questions about
Yeah.
that is really good. I would be, well, I'm sure you are, nurturing the crap out of that. That's the difference between having an awesome life and a boring life. Wow. Cool.
There you go. Kenny, do you want to bring it back to a couple of
Yeah.
just last questions for John?
Oh, yeah. So, like, if we bring it back to the, I guess your experience at different life stages. So we talked about someone that's sort of starting out in their martial arts sort of coaching journey.
Mm.
How about for people more in their middle, and then also if you can answer for late, if your experiences have changed at all. So so someone that's 40 to 45, they're running their club, like they probably have a family, this and that. Like, what sort of experiences have you had, or anything that you want them to avoid?
I didn't have systems in place for a long time. Then I read a book called shit. I forgot that. Um, what's that book called? About systems, operational systems. A girl with a pie shop, and she was the best at making pies, but she needed to replicate her bit. The E Myth. The
Oh,
E
yeah.
Myth. I read that. And then I talked to some people. I was in the States, United States of America, teaching over there for Chuck Norris, who had a big organization and thousands of black bots, and he got them all together at the end of the year for a weekend, and he got me out to teach them about coaching and stuff. And so I talked to a lot of those guys, and they all had systems. That was a new thing for me. Like, system, what are you talking about? I could teach well in the class and do all that, knew my subject matter inside out, could communicate, but I didn't have systems about how to run the school. Um, but they all did. And that was a bit eye-opening for me. So I think systems-based school, so you got all your operational procedures and this and that. And I remember one of them is a pretty good story. He said, John, do you want my operations manual? He had a school of 1,000 people or something. I was never interested in doing that. I would have been happy. Give me a school with 200 people. I'm happy, because I make my money with private lessons, and I make my money doing special solution design for military and policing and other spooky organizations and stuff. That's more interesting to me because they've got serious problems. I'd like to fix it. But he had a school of nearly 1,000 students. Oh, there was another one, Steve LaValle, who died later on, committed suicide, but he had 12,000 students, 12 schools, billionaire from martial arts. And Steve LaValle, he got me out there to coach his coaches for a week on better coaching models. So I did that. And then while I was there, we had a dinner with him and another guy who had this 1,000 student schools. And they said, John, do you want my operations manual? I go, He goes, no, you need my operations manual. I go, okay. The next day they turn up, it's this thick. I open it up. Guess what the first page says? Put key in lock, turn in a clockwise direction, pull handle down, pull door out. I'm not joking. It's like, are you an idiot? But then they pointed out to me something obvious. John, you are exactly like that with coaching. You don't leave anything to anyone's imagination. You get everyone doing this complex thing within 10 minutes because you've got an operations manual coming out of your mouth. And do you see that there's a discrepancy between the way you teach and the way you run your school?
Yeah.
I went, like that. Now, I didn't go that far, key, lock, turn right. But my teaching was like that. And I thought, wow, I better, get some, what's it called? Operations manual. Yeah, get some version of that going. So we did that over the next few years, and, we were always tinkering with it, right? But that was a big change up for me, more professional.
I like it, John. And then, sorry, if you want to keep going on that
Well,
one.
just to say more congruence. If I'm teaching one way, but I'm not operating like that elsewhere, then that's not congruent. And so another big thing for me is congruence. The way I am with you, the way I am on the mat, the way I am with helping some little old lady down the road, it's got to be the same everywhere, because then it's authentic. I'm not one way here and a different way there. And when that incongruence was pointed out to me in terms of, you're not being like you are with teaching, with saving money or this and that, I went, I couldn't take it, and I had to man up, and then suddenly start pointing some of my mind at that stuff.
Nice, John. And then for those people that are a bit more senior and they're 55, 60, they probably have a few different schools and affiliation or something like that. Any experiences that you'd want to impart, or any sort of things that they should be looking out for?
It's good. It's good to the best thing. I tell you, the best thing. It's good to think about this thing that people don't talk about, which is financially independent. And what's good, your mum's probably said the same thing to you, right? But I apologize if I'm being redundant here. But the best thing about it is not the money. It's not like you just got a higher stack of money than other people. That doesn't affect me at all. Like, how can if I had $10 million and not $4 million in my savings, how would I know? I wouldn't know. My coffee doesn't change, right? My playful day to day with my wife, that doesn't change. My students don't change. My train, nothing will change. The only things that change, I don't even think anything will change. So what happens is, I don't think you need 10 million, 20, 30, 50. Everyone's got a different number, but whether it's 2 or 3 or whatever it is, that you can now you can live independent of government pension or anything. You're good, right? Whatever that number is. And that's a lot based on your lifestyle. If you're flying jets every day, well, it's going to need to be more. But if you're not, then you don't need much. So once you hit that number, you get to do things for the only reason that you should do them, which is because you want to do them. That's the beauty of it. So if I come and do a seminar, it's only because I want to be there, not because of the money I'm getting. And that's awesome for both sides, right? Not, oh, I'm here again because they're paying me $3,000 for the seminar, but I don't want to be there. I'm not doing that anymore, right? So I think it's really good. It's much more authentic way to live in the world I think it's moral and ethical to be financially free. And then there's bonuses. Your friend gets in trouble, you can pony up and help. That's such a joy, right? To help someone, right? You probably already figured that out. I didn't know that at your age, but now I know. Wow, it's very nice to be able to get someone through a hard patch because you've got the resources to do it. But a last thing, one more thing, will be, what was I going to say? I just forgot. It was really important. Shy. Something.
That's right, John. If you want, I can sort of so essentially you're saying at the start of your coaching career, you're 25. The main word that I sort of picked up was about sacrifice. It's about doing multiple jobs, saving, doing the hard things. And then when you're in the middle stage, systems, do everything systematic. And then when you're in your later stage, it's all about independence and freedom. So
I just remember.
they're super good. So yeah, if you want to.
Oh, sorry. I'll finish up. I just
All
remembered
good.
the important thing. Because hardly anyone talks about this. I've never met anyone who talks about it. And I've experienced this is super important. In your 60s and 70s, wherever it is, you retire, meaning when I say retire, I don't mean stop doing the things you love. I mean, stop working in ways you don't want to work. Right? So the money's coming from your retirement fund. To get there, I'm sure we agree, we have had to sacrifice for 20, 30 years, right? And so you've learned to live frugally, right? You fly economy, not an economy, the cheapest economy. You've done all that to save the money. Now you're financially independent. Guess what I see? Looking out there with guys who have done it. They are still flying economy. They're still staying in the cheapest hotel, and they've got $10 million in the bank. And they're going to die with $11 million in the bank. So at some point, you've got to flip the script and go, it's time for me to change that habit. I found it difficult. It was really hard because I got into a habit I had to put a gun to my own head and go, "You're buying business, peanut brain." And I didn't, right? And it took me a year for us to, no, just do it. Stay in the $2,000 a night hotel up in the Alps, like just do that shit. I can very happily live in a drain pipe. I'm that kind of person, but it was really difficult for me to do that because I had 35 years of not doing it. So that was extraordinarily hard. That's the opposite to the advice that you have at the beginning. So I'd say flip the script when you are financially squared away and start to enjoy your life, like live your life in ways where there's less punishing things,
Yeah, that's
meaning economy travel to Europe or something like that.
yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
I know I've just been mindful of your time, John. I know there's going to be people that are listening that are in no position to be looking at investing. They've racked up some credit card. They're in distress, like financial distress. Um, so I guess talking about all this stuff might be it might not be that relevant for them. So is there anything that we can help these guys if they are in financial distress, they're facing financial hardship?
Yeah.
What would you be helping them with? Like, is it about talking to like the National Debt Helpline, seeing a financial counselor, all that sort of stuff?
I'm a self-made person. My wife's laughing now. I would look. They can do that stuff. Maybe it's really good. This is what I would do. This is what I did. Someone's on the mat. They've got you squished inside control. It feels like you can't get out. The reason why it feels like you can't get out is because you can't. You can't get out in one move. Now, it's not that they can't get out. They're looking for a way to get out in one move. But it took them 10 little failures to get in there. So to think I can get out of that swamp in one step after it took me 10 to get in there is insane. So don't try to solve the problem like that. Instead, ask this question. Not can I get out? Not can I make this debt go away? This 20 kilos of weight go away? It's can I improve by 5%? That's doable. Don't go to the pub this Friday, right? Eat 2 good meals on the weekend and shit through the week. And then eventually you'll flip it round and then you're right. So by trying to approach problems in small bites, that's how you'll get them solved, not by trying to get out with one magic move. And I learned that on the mat, actually. And then I realized that I can apply that in my life with any problem. Because problems can be overwhelming. And if they're big problems, they usually are overwhelming. And we're looking at the whole problem as if we can solve it. But it took a lot to build that problem that big. So we've got to solve it the same way, lots of little bites. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Something like that.
I like it, John. I think that's a perfect way to wrap it. I know I've gotten a lot of great gold there, and I'm sure the people listening. Lance, do you have any closing remarks?
No, yeah, that's got a lot of gems in there, and a lot of our listeners are, martial arts school learners. So I'll be listening back to this podcast as well. So thanks so much for your time, John. And yeah, hopefully we see you around the traps, competitions, all that type of thing.
Thanks very much, guys. Thank you.
Boom. So guys, hopefully you enjoyed that. If you did, let us know. Hit us up on the Instagram, and yeah, we'll see you on the next episode.